Close your eyes for a second and try to picture your own face. Not a photo of it, not the version you saw in the mirror this morning, just your face from memory, the way it actually looks to someone standing across from you. It's harder than you think. Most people can't do it with any real accuracy. And here's the strange part. For most of human history, that wasn't a party trick. That was simply what it meant to be a person. You lived your entire life never once seeing your own face clearly. Not as a baby, not as a teenager, not as an old man or woman on the day you died. So what did that actually do to people? What did it feel like to walk through the world with no idea what you looked like? Start with the obvious problem. Mirrors, as we know them, smooth, accurate, affordable, are an extremely recent invention. Glass mirrors with a proper metallic backing didn't become common until around the 1500s in parts of Europe. And even then they were expensive luxury items, not something an ordinary person owned. Before that, for the overwhelming majority of human history, roughly 300,000 years of Homo sapiens existing on this planet, there was no reliable way to see your own reflection with any clarity at all, which means almost every human being who has ever lived died without ever truly knowing what their own face looked like. That should sit with you for a second because it's almost impossible to imagine. You know your face. You check it constantly, in phone cameras, in store windows, in the black screen of your laptop before it turns on. The idea of not knowing it feels almost unsettling, like a piece of identity is missing. But for your ancestors, that absence wasn't strange at all. It was the default condition of being alive. So what did they have instead? The earliest option, and probably the one used the longest, was water. Still water acts as a natural mirror, and anthropologists believe early humans almost certainly noticed their own reflection in calm pools, ponds, and slow-moving rivers, the same way you can still see your reflection in a puddle today. But here's the catch. Water reflections are unstable. A breath of wind, a ripple from a fish, even the act of leaning closer to look, distorts the image instantly. You'd get a flicker of yourself, gone almost as soon as it appeared. Not a face you could study, a face you could only ever glimpse. The next real upgrade came thousands of years later with polished stone. Archaeologists have found mirrors made from obsidian, a naturally occurring volcanic glass, dating back roughly 6,000 years in sites across modern-day Turkey. These obsidian mirrors were painstakingly ground and polished by hand until the surface became smooth enough to produce a dim, dark, slightly distorted reflection. It wasn't sharp. It wasn't anything close to what you'd recognize as a mirror today. Researchers studying these artifacts describe the image as murky and shadowed, more of a vague impression of a face than an actual likeness. Still, for the people who owned one, it would have been revolutionary, a face that didn't ripple away the moment you moved. Bronze mirrors came later, appearing in ancient Egypt, China, and across the Mediterranean world starting around 2000 BCE. These were polished metal discs, painstakingly buffed to a reflective shine, and they represented a massive leap forward in clarity. But even these had real limits. Bronze tarnishes, it scratches, it distorts at the edges, and critically, owning one was a privilege restricted almost entirely to the wealthy and powerful. An Egyptian noble might see a reasonably clear version of their own face on a regular basis. A farmer working the same land a few miles away might go their entire life without ever holding one. Which raises an enormous question that historians and psychologists have actually studied seriously. If you never reliably see your own face, how do you know who you are? How do you build a sense of identity around an image you've never actually confirmed? This is where the research gets genuinely fascinating. In the late 1960s, a psychologist named Gordon Gallup developed what's now called the mirror test, designed to study self-recognition in animals. The setup is simple. You place a mark on an animal's face or body somewhere it can't see without a mirror, then put a mirror in front of it and watch what happens. Animals that reach up to touch the mark on their own body, rather than reacting to the mirror as though it shows another animal, are demonstrating something psychologists consider a marker of self-awareness. Humans pass this test reliably starting around 18 months of age. Chimpanzees, dolphins, elephants, and magpies pass it too. Most other animals never do. They treat the reflection as a stranger, forever. Here's the part that should stop you for a second. Human infants don't need a mirror to develop a sense of self. They develop one anyway, gradually, through completely different mechanisms, mostly built from how other people react to them. A baby learns who they are not by looking at their own face, but by watching their mother's face react to theirs, by feeling the texture of their own skin, by noticing that when they move their hand, the hand they see moves too. Psychologists call part of this process proprioception, your body's internal sense of where its own parts are are in space, completely independent of vision. You already know where your hand is right now without looking at it. Your ancestors knew their own bodies through exactly that same internal sense, just without ever needing a face to anchor it visually. So identity, it turns out, was never actually built on seeing your own reflection. It was built on something deeper and stranger, a constant feedback loop of how other people treated you, how your body felt from the inside, and how your actions in the world were received and remembered by the group around you. Your face existed to other people far more vividly and far more often than it ever existed to you. Think about what that actually means for something as basic as vanity, or self-criticism, or the strange modern habit of scrutinizing your own appearance in a screen 40 times a day. None of that existed in anything close to the same form for almost the entirety of human history. There's a researcher named Sarah Mernon who has studied how constant exposure to one's own reflected image correlates with self-consciousness and appearance-based anxiety in modern populations, and her findings line up with something fairly intuitive once you think about it. The more often you see your own face, the more opportunities your brain has to judge it, compare it, and find fault with it. Your ancestors, by contrast, may have built their entire sense of self almost entirely free from that specific kind of self-surveillance. Not because they were more secure, because the technology to constantly check simply didn't exist yet. That doesn't mean ancient people had no concept of appearance or no vanity at all. Far from it. Cosmetics, body paint, and ochre pigment used for decoration date back over 100,000 years, long before any kind of clear mirror existed. People absolutely cared what they looked like to others. They just calibrated that appearance almost entirely through external feedback, through how a partner reacted, through how the group responded, through the reflected water glimpsed for half a second before the ripple erased it. Vanity didn't require a mirror. It required other people. There's something almost poetic in that. For nearly the entire span of human existence, your face belonged more to everyone around you than it ever belonged to you. The people who loved you, who feared you, who depended on you, they carried the clearest version of your face that existed anywhere in the world, stored only in memory, never on glass. You were, in the most literal sense, known by your community in a way you could never fully know yourself. Now think about your own morning. You probably checked a mirror within minutes of waking up. You've likely looked at your own face dozens of times today already, in a phone screen, a window, a video call thumbnail in the corner of your own meeting. That habit, so automatic you don't even register it as strange, would have been almost incomprehensible for the overwhelming majority of people who ever lived. Not because they wouldn't have wanted to see themselves clearly, because the option simply never existed. So the next time you catch your own reflection without meaning to, in a dark window at night or the back of a spoon, take half a second longer than usual. That flicker of a face staring back at you, slightly distorted, slightly unclear, is closer to how almost every human being who has ever existed actually knew themselves. Not as a fixed, polished, constantly available image, as a fleeting glimpse, gone again the moment the water moved.
Don't forget to hit that subscribe button right up there, and check out this awesome video too!